Hi everyone, and welcome to the VU Elevenses session on roles and responsibilities. My name is Peter. I'm a lecturer in clinical psychology, and I work with people who want to improve their mental health and want to enrich their relationships as well. And so in this session, we're going to talk about how the current situation has changed some of the way we engage in our relationships. It's thrown up a few curveballs, and it's certainly our relationships especially aren't looking how we might have expected them to look when we first got into them. So let's think about how, or the problems that arise. One of them is when we don't communicate about roles and responsibilities really clearly in our relationship. And another problem that arises, which can sometimes be even worse or even more challenging, is when others don't fulfill their roles and responsibilities, or maybe a little bit more accurately, when they don't fulfill roles and responsibilities as we define them. When we're in relationships, we get kind of stuck in these processes. They're relatively predictable. They're common parts of all human relationships. And this is a really common part of close relationships. We fall into one or two kind of categories. Some of us overfunction, which means we really like to suddenly become these uninvited experts in how other people should be doing things. And we don't hold back in telling them that. We move forward into the situation and we try and take control. Other people, however, some of us underfunction. We become less competent under stress, and we find it more difficult to know what to do. And this is really playing out at the moment. I'm definitely seeing people falling into that overfunctioning role quite easily and getting very frustrated with people who are underfunctioning, who are finding it difficult to know what to do. So it's important to remember that this is just a normal part of human relationships, and when we're falling into these patterns, we can move out of them. But it's sometimes easier for overfunctioners than it is underfunctioners. Underfunctioners often find it really difficult to know what to do, whereas overfunctioners will happily tell you that they know what's best for you and everybody else in their, not only in their lives, but possibly in their country or on the face of the earth. So, some steps that you can go through. The first one is clarify. Communicate is next, and then thinking about collaborating. Let's start with clarifying. First of all, see if you can take some time for yourself to get clear on what the roles and responsibilities are as you see them and how you would like them to be. See if you can even write it down. Get a sense of what you expect from other people in your life. These might be your partners, your children, people who you work with, people in community organizations or faith communities. Anywhere where you're coming in contact with people that you know and care about, what do you expect from them and why do you expect this? It's very difficult to communicate our expectations and be flexible with them if we don't know what they are in the first place. The next step is communicate, and this is a really challenging step. Tell others how you see things and how you would like things to be. What do you need and what do you want? This can be a very challenging thing to do because the goal here is to communicate how we see things rather than how things absolutely are or should be. And then our next challenge is to invite the other person to do the same and listen with respect for differences. Other people need not see things our way, and trying to stay out of blame. When we communicate our needs to people and they communicate our needs to us, sometimes it can be very easy to get defensive, and this is our favorite go-to to soothe that defensiveness, is to blame other people and point out all of the areas where they're not fulfilling their roles and responsibilities. But it can be more productive for us to really listen to the way they see things and get a sense of the fact that there might be ways where they can change and ways that we can change. And that's the next step, is see what you can collaborate on. When you're speaking to the people in your life about your expectations, your wants and your needs, try and listen for the parts that you can agree with, because we tend to listen for the parts that we disagree with because we're so ready to argue. Can you balance the wants and needs of the individuals, yourself included? You don't need to give up all of your wants and needs, and the needs of the relationship. So what's required, what's needed in the short term, and also what's reasonable. And for some of us, there are a lot of different wants and needs floating around at the moment. They might be the needs of our employer, the needs of our children, the needs of our partners, the needs of our other family members. See if you can take a both and approach. Sometimes it's really easy to get into either or thinking either you get your needs met or I get my needs met. Maybe there's room for everything. And try and celebrate little wins. If you come together and make something work, there's maybe just a little bit less complaining, a little bit less stress, a few more things to enjoy. Give yourself a break and celebrate that, and celebrate it for everyone. This is really important when you've got young people in your life. If you're trying to encourage them to rise to expectations, it can be really easy to focus on the negative and miss those sometimes small, but definitely times where they do rise to that challenge. So as soon as you see that, celebrate those wins. I want to finish with a video about staying out of blame, because it's so corrosive in our relationships, and it's so useful to be able to know when we're blaming people and to be able to step back from that.
How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? Hi, my name is Brene. I'm a blamer. Let me just tell you this quick story. So this is a couple years ago when I first realized the magnitude to which I blame. I'm in my house. I have on white slacks and a pink sweater set, and I'm drinking a cup of coffee in my kitchen. It's a full cup of coffee. I drop it on the tile floor. It goes into a million pieces, splashes up all over me. And a millisecond after it hit the floor, right out of my mouth is this: "Damn you, Steve." Who is my husband? Because let me tell you how fast this works for me. So Steve plays water polo with a group of friends. And the night before, he went to go play water polo. And I said, hey, make sure you come back at 10, because I can never fall asleep until you're home. And he got back at 10:30. And so I went to bed a little bit later than I thought. Ergo, my second cup of coffee that I probably would not be having had he come home when we discussed. Therefore, and so the rest of the story is I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Steve calls, caller ID. I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's going on, babe? What's going on? So I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I'm cleaning up the coffee that spilled all like dial tone. Because he knows. How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the no thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger. People who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we expend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was.
So there are some final thoughts on blame from the ever-wise Brené Brown. So hopefully that helps you think about the roles and responsibilities in your relationships, how you can understand them, And if you're finding yourself resentful because people aren't fulfilling those, that's absolutely fine, completely normal. We've all been there. But taking a step back to get clear, thinking about how you might communicate your thoughts, and then finding those moments for collaboration can really help move your relationships forward and keep them happy and healthy, especially now when things are so difficult.